The show's going to be a little different this season.
We are referring to this as game of the game. Well, the game is that there's a hat. In that hat, there are prompts. We do not know what these prompts say.
You and we both don't know what we're going to be talking about next episode. Cookie Pocket, the game of the game.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game.
The game of the game.
You get the hook. I'm stealing the show now. Episode 2, way back in, what was this, 2020? Probably.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I think it was
around
2020
there.
when we started this. Ancient texts, the ancient scrolls of
I was a
letterbox.
teenager when we started
before.
doing this.
Yep.
Goodness.
Cookie Pocket past.
It all
The
began
ghost of
with
Cookie
Christian
Pocket
saying,
Past.
do you want to host a
Well,
podcast with me and Mitchell? And Mitchell later revealing he thought Christian was joking when he first asked him about it.
And now I
Yep.
still have people finding our podcast. My unit is slowly figuring it out now. I thought I could keep it secret. But
Yeah.
Captain Chem, if you're hearing this, I'm glad you found the podcast. But you exposed me to everybody. Anyway. It was pretty easy to choose the Changeling from
1980.
What was it, 1985?
Just 80.
Oh, sorry. I was uploading all the other episodes and I got all the dates mixed up. The Changeling, not to be confused with The Changeling or Changeling. The Changeling in 1980 has Christian's least favorite face of all time. All time. There's no face worse. George C. Scott. Probably better as Patton than man who walks around for 20 minutes and lifts things and looks frustrated and falls down and is sad. The Changeling is about this man who lost his wife and daughter because they could not avoid an obvious car crash that was impending, and they decided to lay on the ground and get murked instead. And he watched it happen, and he was so sad that he decided to go to college and teach music in Seattle. They were in New York, and I was like, all right, I'm going to Seattle, take this gig up. I'm going to rent this house from this random historical society, and the house is haunted. Ooh, it's haunted. And it's a poltergeist, and things get thrown around and about. And he slowly, very, very slowly, painstakingly, dare I say, figures out that, well, I don't want to spoil it for you. I mean, you know, it's been 6 years. You could have listened to our episode and you still didn't listen to it, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. No, I'm just kidding. He finds out Joseph Carmichael, the real one, is dead. Da-da. And the fake one is, I think he's from Switzerland or something, and he's adopted from Switzerland, and he becomes a senator because the fortune has been saved. Because the child was murked. I forgot to mention that part. That's an important part. The actual child was murked in the tub by the dad, and the dad wanted the money because the child was going to die anyway by 21, so he wouldn't be able to get the money. So then he adopted a kid in place of him so that he got the money, and then now that kid is a senator. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Straightforward story.
In my
That's it.
Letterboxd
That's the whole
review for
thing.
this rewatch, I ruminated that classic ghost stories are often better in the telling than the showing, but after Mitchell's summary, I don't know if even that is true.
Anyway, that is
More or
the
less, yeah.
Changeling. That is the Changeling. You have been changed, and Ling, I guess, because it's a child that's been changed. It's a Changeling. What did you think, Zach? Your second time around,
It's
or
my
whatever
third
time
time.
around.
Yeah,
Third time, I think.
technically my fourth, I guess, because back when we started the show many years ago, I decided when I had much more time, because we started the show during lockdown, I think, I decided, you know what? I'm going to do something I haven't done before when reviewing and thinking about movies. all of these movies we talk about on the show, I want to watch twice before I talk about them on the program. And that didn't last long. But I watched it twice for that first episode that we did, and then I bought the Blu-ray from Severin, which is a very nice edition. And I watched it. That was probably 2 or 3 years later, and then I watched it again for this most recent episode. And while I think my feelings overall on the film have remained fairly similar, it is interesting to go back and take note of things that I definitely didn't appreciate when we first started talking about this stuff, talking about films and movies in general 6 years ago at this point. I have much more of an appreciation, I think, for the direction and the cinematography in this. I do think they do a lot of really neat things in the house with the way the camera is positioned and the way the camera moves to create this feeling that the characters are being watched. There's a lot of the time when people walk into the foyer or the house, they're being filmed from very high angles, as if it's the perspective of somebody 1 or 2 floors up looking down at them. There's lots of shots of the camera just kind of going out of a room and down the stairs until it eventually finds something to look at, which reminded me quite a bit of Steven Soderbergh's latest movie, which wasn't even out yet when we first talked about this movie, but the movie Presence that he made maybe a year or 2 ago, which did something very similar. Presence, though, the premise kind of straight up was the camera in this is the point of view of a ghost in a house. But it does lots of similar things where it sort of drifts around and goes into rooms and sees what's happening there and then goes somewhere else. So I think I enjoy the movie. I'm more willing, I think, to admit the movie's flaws than I was when we talked about this the first time, because first time round, I picked the first movie we ever talked about on the show. I was looking forward to it. I think I felt like I had some cred to justify. So even though the movie has remained a 3 for me, I think I was a lot more defensive about it at that point. And I'm willing to admit that this movie does have dull parts. It has musty parts. George C. Scott does seem a little reluctant to emote in some scenes. In others, as is often the case with George C. Scott, you get this sudden burst of fury, which he was often parodied for on The Simpsons and Family Guy and whatever else before he died. There's that infamous Simpsons gag where George C. Scott gets hit in the groin with a football. Are you guys familiar with this? So this is an example of something that's better in the showing than the telling. But it's an episode where George C. Scott is in the episode and he's Bart kicks a football or whatever, and it hits George C. Scott. And I don't think it's his actual voice, but it's meant to be him, and he just goes, "Ow, my groin," as he bends over. But yeah, it's a 3 out of 5 movie for me. As somebody who really enjoys classic ghost stories, I do like this film. I think it has very, very creepy sections. But generally, less is more. And in this movie, the scenes where they're showing you less and just creating a creepy atmosphere, those work a lot better than the scenes where we actually see a ghostly boy under the floorboards or a face that appears in the tub that George goes, "Huh," at. I will say this reminded me a little bit in terms of its atmosphere of some of the ghost stories for Christmas that we've talked about on this show, in its sort of musty character and its age. But I'm a fan of that. Works a little better for 25 minutes to half an hour than it does for like 100 minutes in this case.
Yeah. Yeah. How do I want to go about doing this?
Uh-oh.
Oftentimes, I refer to season 1 Christian on this show as though he were another person entirely and not just a younger version of me. And perhaps that's true, perhaps it's not true. I think sometimes he was wrong and sometimes he was right. I, as a general matter, would basically disown everything I say on season 1 just from the standpoint of finding it very cringe and excessive, and maybe trying to find ways to justify my subjective experience of a movie in less defensible, objective ways. all that being said, I still don't like this movie. I still don't think it's good. I was very sort of moralizing and on my high horse the first time we talked about this. And looking back, it's very funny to me because now the scenes I took so much issue with at that time are like the times where I kind of perk up and become interested now because at least something's happening that's like visceral. And I don't know. I'm sure we'll talk about all these little things more in depth, but I do take issue with Scott's performance quite a bit. I think he does not appear frightened almost ever. There are a couple moments where he reflects on the loss of his family. Like there's this one brief scene where he's just laying in bed sobbing, and I'm like, oh wow, that's great. That's good acting. I don't know where that was for the other 104 minutes, but that was great. Um, and he reacts to scares as though he were like checking if his oven was preheated or opening a window to let some air in. He's so disinterested in everything around him most of the time. There are setups that theoretically would lead to things I enjoy, like the political intrigue of the whole false Carmichael being a senator and leveraging his political power to get a policeman there, which is kind of clumsy. And his whole music professor thing, there is no music class being taught in that large of a lecture hall anywhere. That was bizarre.
It was because of the rain, Christian. It was the rain
Of
outside, the
course.
fire next door.
But these are all kind of things that are gestured at and don't really matter to the story. I don't think his professorship or musical ability is unbelievable, but it's just kind of there. The score is nice in parts, and some of the scares are good, but the story is really convoluted, and I don't think it makes a ton of sense the way that the ghost is like haunting him, even though he's kind of really trying to help the ghost when we deconstruct things and he's trying to sort of reveal the mystery and how things happened. But mostly I was just bored and not interested. So 1.5.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting. Honestly, like we all knew that we were bringing this back just so we could hear Christian
Okay.
change his mind, and he changed
Well,
it.
because I was curious,
in not
Mitchell,
enough ways.
what made this the movie you picked
Um,
as a film to talk
Yeah,
about for this
I was
prompt,
too.
which was
Oh,
a
yeah.
film we've already covered on the show before.
Yeah. Yeah, which as I basically said when I read the prompt, it could have been anything. I could have chosen anything we ever reviewed ever. I could have chosen any.
We could have talked
MCU
about
movie.
Paul Bart Malkoff.
I could have chosen any of the Cinemator anything. I could have talked about Paul Blart. But we had mentioned this one a couple times before, and I felt like
Mhm.
it only made sense to go
Yeah.
like the oldest, basically, to go to the first real episode, which would have the most, not necessarily the most difference, but just the most, well, I guess the most difference, less so in like the conversation and more so in our demeanor and
Yeah.
just our confidence, I guess, and our orientation towards the film at large. But I think so I've listened to that episode a few times before. I haven't listened to it
Same.
in probably at least a couple of years, so I have no idea what my opinion was. I would say what I would imagine I said, and also based off of my review, which I said haunted house again, and I didn't realize this time again
really?
that Zach had also said haunted house in his review, which is really funny.
Yeah.
But it does feel like a haunted house film, and it's not like a necessarily like hitting cliches like
Mhm.
Haunted Mansion or with Eddie Murphy or something. It's not like a crazy zany like going around and there's ghosts everywhere type thing. I think part of this goes back to why I enjoyed Black Christmas and why I enjoyed Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. And that's like almost a guilty pleasure. I think anytime anyone else watches that besides me and my parents, no one else likes it. but it follows very similar beats, you know. for some reason the character ends up in this house, and then there's a ghost that you think is really evil but is actually trying to help you get rest or something, or feel at rest or whatever. And obviously that's been repeated a dozen other times. But the reason why I liked Woman in Black so much was because the story wasn't necessarily explained into you. First of all, Daniel Radcliffe is a way better actor than George C. Scott. Just to preface that, obviously. But also I just think the quality of filmmaking is generally better, or quality of production is better, I think. And just the way the story was delivered, it's very punchy. You feel like you're building up towards something, and there's like an ongoing conflict. And with this, I just didn't feel like that at all. I felt it literally feels like, it's funny that Zach, you said like musty. It's like musty. And it's like trudging through like a musty, dusty,
attic,
dirty, like smelly house from a million attic with a bunch of boxes in it that have like nothing in it. And it's just, it's not really, to me, it's the first time when I saw it, I think I was bored. And the first maybe like 10 or 15 minutes of this, it, like the boredom hits like a freight train. It hits like a car, like a truck running you over in New York after you're laying on the side of the road. But for the rest of the film, it's like, okay, I'm starting to remember what the story was. It wasn't that complicated. Kind of get the point. Basically see where it's going. Do we really need all these scenes with, ooh, the property, ooh, the newspapers, and it's just, there's no, maybe it's like the score placing, and it's just like it's really boring. It just like comes out of nowhere. There's really no build up or connection to it. There's relatively good pacing. It goes back and forth. You have like the hauntings and then the seance, and then things happen to him. He goes somewhere, he learns something, he comes back, there's more hauntings. It's kind of like the general gist, you know, and it's very predictable. And the hauntings are awesome and filmed fantastically. The two things I mentioned in my review was the cinematography and the sound design basically make the hauntings what they are. Super engaging. You know, just the general pacing of those scenes are good. But yeah, the pacing for the whole film is generally like good in terms of like plot delivery and everything, but it's just it's so I don't know. It's like you're just getting dragged. It doesn't feel like you're getting pushed. It feels like you're getting dragged as an audience member. One of the things I definitely mentioned with George C. Scott was his acting. I probably talked him up too much when I first saw this because I'm a huge fan of Patton. and he works great in Patton because Patton is like clearly has a lot of insecurities with his faith and the way that he treats his men and stuff, like deep down, but he uses his gruffness and assertiveness and confidence and speech, you know, charisma and speech abilities and actual prowess, you know, general level battlefield prowess, to like cover up for that. And I feel like in this case, I kind of disagree with Christian. Like, I think his ability to cover that up and not show emotion when you know that he's going through a lot, and they kind of poke him about it at the society in the beginning, and he's kind of just smoking and trying to like get it off and not worry about it. Get it off. Oh geez. Get it off of his conscience and not worry about it. It's not that kind of movie, but it's, I like that about him, and I like that about his character. I just think because the plot is so slow burning, it doesn't really work. And when he's doing slow, methodical things, he's not very talented. He's not very engaging. Like the way that he's placed in shots and his like stills and I guess the stills, like when he's staring at something, or like his initial reaction, or like when he's like angrily doing something or he's crying, like just like a still shot of that looks good. Yeah. But like him actually acting it out convincingly and then
which
changing
I think is
emotion
a script
is
thing.
Not convincing,
because he photographs really well. I'll agree with you. These shots of him like craggy face walking around in this house, you which I think was one of the reasons I was kind of attracted to picking this film back in season 1, is you take individual screen grabs of this movie and you look at it, or at least I look at it, and as somebody who likes ghost stories and these classic actors, I think that looks awesome. George C. Scott walking around this old haunted house. There's a music box. There's this creepy wheelchair. But yeah, then you actually get to the scene, and it's George C. Scott walking to the side of the room. and going, and then the side of the room and going, what's that banging sound?
Zach looking up right now is exactly what he does that like 5 times.
Yeah,
and
which I think
like
is
5 minutes.
to me, that seems like a script writing thing. The script moves so slowly. I think if you pared this down to like 45 minutes, you would have this really great like October horror story, like TV special or something like that. You could have all these great scares.
Yep.
And at the end, everything goes hog wild and the house is on fire and the chandelier's falling down, which I think is a great finale. I do think that's a really good payoff. But by the time we get there, it feels like we've spent so long hiking up this mountain that it's like, this is it? Mm-hmm. Come on, guys. I was waiting for you to blow my socks off and the chandelier just fell, you know.
So, like, to summarize, I think the momentum, I think I probably talked about it. There's no momentum. There's nothing really moving the plot forward at all. George C. Scott is generally very mid, but he shows very well. And generally, I like the way that he reacts to things. And that's almost in a way I could kind of sympathize with that, because when I'm reacting to things, I'm not like freaking out. Like, obviously it's a film. You want to see the person freak out, and it makes sense because you want to feel like you're there with them. But in this case, I'd almost be like, when I'm thinking I hear something that's scary, I'm just like staring at it, and I'm not like, oh, what was that? Oh, whoa. Or it's like, oh no. I'm usually just like, you know,
this
like
is
looking
why we
at
need
it.
a video version of
but
the
in a
podcast
slow
so
burn.
everyone can see you and Zach mimicking.
Right. Yeah. But in this, in the slow burn film, when there's so little plot to drive anything, and it's just walking around and looking at things, amongst all of the epic, really stressful haunts and the awesome sound design going along with it, it's just not. It doesn't go a full mile for me at all. If it does, it takes an hour and a half.
I'm willing to.
So 3 out of 5.
I'm willing to buy the whole. He's suppressing his grief around other people, especially in ensemble scenes where he's with more than one person. I think that works. And I also can accept his sort of having this paternalistic's not the right word, but protective instinct when Trish Van Devier's character is hysterical when the wheelchair chases her down the stairs, which I think is a much more amusing visual than it is a frightening one. But she plays that brilliantly. She's like proper hyperventilating, and it's convincing. And I think in that setting, it sort of makes sense. It's a normal human reaction for you to sort of set aside your own fears to protect or reassure that person, which Scott's character does there.
Yeah, I think there are some moments in this that, because I do think you got to thread the line, like you were saying, Mitchell, with an actor like George C. Scott, where if you want George C. Scott to be scared in a haunted house, you can't have him always going, ah! You know, that's gonna get funny. That's like gonna get away. Funny very quickly. So you need something a little more impassive from him, and I do think there's scenes that work when he's listening to the tape recording of the seance and he recognizes there's a voice and he just drops his cigarette as his eyes widen. I think that's a really good moment. That feels like a real reaction, and it also feels like the way his character would react. When the ball bounces down the stairs after he gets right back from chucking it in the river and he just kind of backs up against the wall and looks at it. That feels good to me. There's another point where he's trying to get the lock open and the banging starts and he just holds his hands to his ears with this sort of like, what is going on expression on his face. That stuff works. But then as many scenes as there are that work, there's just as many, if not more, moments of just, you know, impassive, I wonder what's over at craft services. Oh, they have pretzels, you know. he seems to be thinking of something completely different.
When they're in the car and he's explaining like the entire background, like you could learn about the whole film in that one car ride. Like, it's actually annoying. And between the car ride and the detective, the cop coming, them two, those two conversations probably are less like a minute long tops. And it covers the entire plot. Like they explain it to you. Like in case well, I heard you did this, and you did this, and I read the Wikipedia for the Changeling, or I saw the Spaceballs plot. I watched it on my VHS, and I know what you've been doing this whole time.
The
John.
commuter exposition dump, yeah. And it's not like in case you've missed it somewhere else. That scene is where you are told everything that matters about the background of the movie, as George C. Scott and the female lead drive somewhere. I think they're going to the woman's house that's built on top of the well. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he goes through the entire exposition about Joseph Carmichael, the boy, and it's like a 5-minute scene in the car, as they're driving. I think they're on the same bridge the whole time too. It's like, how long is this bridge?
That goes back into what Christian was saying about like suspending disbelief and the convolution. It's like the child's body being like under this random property and just, there's just information that he's there. He has the medal with the full name on it, with the middle name, like you need. Oh, the senator has the exact same one, and I get why they did that. Obviously, it's like the surprise, the connection, or whatever. That's another thing. The running. I'm trying to think of another film that does it, but Monty Python and Holy Grail is the only thing I can think of when it's just like the knights are running. It's like it's George C. Scott running on the runway, like I live in your house. Look at the thing, and he's like, I did everything you wanted me to.
That's very funny to me because when he says I did everything you wanted me to, because he doesn't seem frightened at all or even angry. He's just kind of like defeated. And like,
I lost all my money at the casino.
Now, I do like that scene, but I think it's funny that George C. Scott knows that this is the ghost of like a 10-year-old boy, and nonetheless, he begins his outrage with, "Goddamn son of a bitch."
There are some bright spots. Like, I will say, I think the woman at the house that they go to, she does not have a lot of screen time, but she gives a strong performance that contributes to the atmosphere of the whole thing and the foreboding of the mystery.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Zach, you mentioned the cinematography and in your review how influential it's been to other like-minded horror movies. There are times where I enjoy that and times where, this is pretty nitpicky, but times where I feel like the theoretical perspective of the shot changes on a dime. For example, when they enter the house and we have that sort of like overhead as if the ghost is sort of lingering over them, that to me clearly is meant to signify the observation of the ghost, right? But then there's the seance scene where it kind of just like follows them around the table, and that could be the ghost, or it could just be kind of like the camera is moving because the camera is moving. And then there's another scene closer to the end when he returns to the house and like a bunch of crazy stuff is happening, and it goes like up the stairs and to the side, and it's at that point it feels as though the camera is just mimicking George C. Scott turning his head in response to all these sounds.
Yeah.
But then the camera turns back to face him, and which is not a huge deal. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, as the viewer, I'm thinking, oh, the camera is him. Oh, no, it's not. Now the camera is looking at him. But then I'm sort of consciously reminded of the fact that the camera is there and somebody else is moving that camera. I think I would prefer if there was a more consistent logic to the perspective of these moving shots. I'm not saying it has to be the ghost all the time or Scott's character all the time, but there's just enough variation going on that I found it, if not confusing, at least a bit distracting.
He wants the Sam Raimi on a makeshift skateboard.
I can't say that bugs me necessarily, but I also think I am coming from a different perspective in that, as somebody who works with cameras every day and like makes movies, I'm kind of always aware of a camera being there when I watch a movie and like make myself aware of a camera being there.
Argument lost.
Well,
Christian
it's
lost.
it's
That's a fair
and
point.
I know people who, like, when I watch movies with them and bring that kind of thing up, they're annoyed because they want to be immersed. I think that maybe doesn't annoy me as much because I don't necessarily care as much about the immersion, which is, you could see it as a weakness, you could see it as a different perspective. However, I do wonder though, as we're talking about it, I do find myself wondering if this kind of haunted house movie, from our modern perspective, is it played out? Can you do this kind of haunted house movie, or does this kind of haunted house movie still hold up, or has it just been done too many times? Because I think of a movie like Poltergeist, which is stylistically a different movie, but in terms of structure is very similar to this. Family moves into a house, strange occurrences happen for about 100 minutes, and then at the end, oh boy, everything hits the fan at once. It's a very similar progression, and I think a lot of people also complain about Poltergeist sort of being like a middling 3 out of 5 movie, and also feeling very slow until wham at the end. Is that kind of movie just something we're kind of over from our modern perspective?
I think, you know what, Christian, go first. You know what,
Ah,
Christian, go first. I'll go first. I'll save him. He's used his one free save for the season. One free save.
the mulligans are
I
gone.
would say the mulligans are gone. I mean, I do think it kind of is a timeless formula. I do think it is. I think there's basically, with the amount of interaction that he has with the house, it makes the house feel, it makes it not feel like I was saying, like with Haunted Mansion, where it's like a ride, or like Scooby-Doo, where it's like the setting is serving whatever's happening, instead of it being like deeply embedded in what's going on. And clearly the house has a lot. I mean, the ball is in the house, the piano's in the house, the musical box, the wheelchair. There's a lot of stuff in the house that's like contributing to the glass that explodes, the door handle, the hammer. It's just everything. It's like house objects, that are like deeply involved in the plot. And I feel like that makes a really big difference. And that to me is what makes it more immersive, not necessarily like the camera angles or anything. I think that's like really effectively using the production design. Similarly, I would say Get Out actually does that sometimes too, maybe to a lesser extent, and arguably is filmed more conventionally, as a negative, is filmed more conventionally, where it's like, oh, you're just going down a hallway. But at least like the house expands, you have the outdoors, you have the inside, you have that little crevice area when what's his name finds the pictures and stuff. You have the obviously like the library, or not the library. I haven't seen Get Out in a long time, but when he's watching the TV, you have sitting down in the little like seat, like love seat area, when he's getting entranced and stuff. You have the backyard. You just get like an immersive sense of the production, and I feel like that is kind of a big part of what makes like quote unquote a haunted house film engaging. And focusing in on like the furniture and the objects in the house.
Yeah.
And obviously the acting being good makes a difference too.
I took such a long pause when Mitchell said, Christian, go first, because I felt like I was about to say something that's been said a lot of times by other people, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I think it's sort of like how Steven Spielberg talks about why he appreciates Jordan Peele's perspective on horror movies now. I think there's a time-bound topical element to things where you put your own skin on it, or you spin a story that's been told a dozen times already in a new way by setting it in your world. And the first example of haunted house, this isn't really a haunted house movie, but I thought of Barbarian, the Zach Kreger film, which is set at an Airbnb rather than a house. And that kind of becomes something else. Something crazier than this, I think. But no, I don't think the haunted house concept is dead necessarily. I for one think Poltergeist is a significantly stronger film than this one.
Interesting.
It's a 3 out of
Yes.
5, but I think it's fun and consistent, at least in a way that this is not consistent. But the same way that we tell any story a second or third or 30th time in a slightly different way, I think the haunted house is as welcome a template as any other.
Well, I guess that's an interesting follow-up question, because you mentioned a modern spin on a haunted house story, and it made me think, what's the last, like, true blue haunted house movie that actually came out? I don't know if I can think of one.
Yeah, me neither.
Those corporate heads, that it's all their fault, Zach.
Well, I'm not trying,
Creativity is
I
not
don't think
dead.
haunted house is like a concept bound to creativity or
What
anything
if
like that. But
What if Chat GPT takes over the house?
they did that 2
Internet
years
of
ago,
Things?
I guess.
What
So
if-
if
what
we're
if the house
considering
tries to
a
eat
horror
them?
remake of, what was that Disney Channel original movie, Smart House? If we're considering a horror remake of Smart House
What?
being a haunted
What?
house movie, they made that like a couple years ago.
No! They locked the
Yeah.
door! They turned off the lights! They turned on my blender!
There was the Haunted Mansion movie.
Oh,
with,
that's horrible.
Lakeith Stanfield and Danny DeVito.
Oh,
and
you're
Owen
right, with the
Wilson.
We don't
Baskin
talk
Robbins
about that one.
sponsorship. I
We
forgot
don't-
about
we
that.
don't-
Yeah. Yeah. That one's pretty brutal. I don't know if that's even worth mentioning.
Huh.
Mm. I forgot that came out in cinemas. I remember seeing ads for that. That seems like it should have
Brutal in
gone
the
straight to
sense of
Disney
very
Plus.
bad, not brutal in the sense of like, oh, scary.
Oh, yeah. I didn't expect the Danny DeVito, Lakeith Stanfield remake of The Haunted Mansion to be frightening. Oh, Mitchell is checking
I haven't heard
IMDb.
of any of these, so. Hell House,
Oh,
the Carmichael
Oh,
Manor.
Carmichael.
that's
there
weird.
you go.
The connections.
Wait, everybody hold on.
Is Carmichael meant to be
Everybody
a
hold
state
on.
senator or a federal senator?
That's a good question, because
Probably a state senator,
that's
right?
a good question, law student. I guess I didn't realize that states have their own senators. That's
Sure.
I don't think
the
he's meant
reason
to
I
be.
asked-
He's not meant to be that rich and powerful because he's a senator, though. That's something that I remember. I don't think we talked about it last time we talked about this movie, but I remember thinking that last time we talked about the movie. He's incredibly rich and powerful because he inherited all this money as part of his father's scheme, and then he became a senator because of that wealth, rather than vice versa.
I got it, Zach. Yeah, it's a town.
Oh,
Return
yes,
to
the
Silent
biggest
Hill.
hit of last week.
the number one movie in the world. Except, no, it's not.
The number one movie in the
very
world
fake
at
news.
this second. Okay, now it's time.
Hell House.
You can't say that it wasn't, though.
Hell House Origins: The Carmichael Manor is a direct-to-streaming found footage horror film,
Well, that
It's
sounds
on,
like
like,
solid
Shudder.
gold. I think the haunted
Yeah, it's
house
on
is
Shudder.
alive and well.
and there's been four. There's been four. It's the fourth one that just came out a few years ago.
The reason I asked about the whole
Hmm.
Carmichael senator thing is because it struck me as odd if like a congressman on Capitol Hill would leverage like a local policeman. Like I think that suggests probably state senator. But also it's theoretically interesting that the Carmichael Scott encounters in the movie is not the guy who kills the real Carmichael, but it's the eventual beneficiary of that.
Yeah.
That's something that I think that's another example of something that works better on the page than it does on the film. It just makes things a little bit more complicated, and on some level you have to tell via exposition dump how that happened.
Yeah. I think it's played well in that scene where George C. Scott takes his thesis to Carmichael and goes, "Here you go." We don't even know whether or not the living Carmichael actually even knew that he was part of this big plot, like a cog in this machine. And I do think it's played well where, you can see that he's being pretty genuine about, like, how dare you say these things about my father? My father was a good man.
Yeah.
And that does kind of, wreck him to a certain extent. There's some interesting meat on this bone. I will stand by my statement that it's a very elegantly made movie. It is a very handsome presentation. It's a good looking film, and I have a weird admiration for Peter Medak, the director. It might just be because he directed this movie and it was the first movie we ever talked about on the show, but I have this weird like soft spot for Peter Medak. This is the best movie I've seen from him. He doesn't really have a great track record. He's a pretty mediocre journeyman, all things considered. But I keep coming back to his movies for some reason. I have this weird fascination with him. And this is the one that everybody talks about. And so far, at least, I haven't seen Species 2. Maybe that'll be the one that rocks the boat. But so far, it seems like a good thing that this is the one people remember him for.
The cinematographer is
Okay.
John Coquion. John Coquion. He's Dutch. And he did... Well, I can't list all these. Yeah, you'll be like, oh, I know what they are. I don't know what they are.
Oh,
Cross of Iron
okay.
is great.
All right.
I love Cross of Iron. Yep. That's a war film with the Soviets and the Germans.
That is a good one.
Pat Garrett.
And
that's a great one. Oh, so he might have been like Sam Peckinpah's guy.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, is that like
TV
a 70s one? Oh, I didn't know they even did that one.
Yeah. The Amateur.
Oh, that's interesting because somebody else, they just remade The Amateur with Rami Malek. They just remade that last year. But
yeah, Wuthering Heights,
Timothy
which is being
Dalton
remade
Heathcliff.
too.
That is very interesting.
Mhm.
I might have to look at that one.
I'm going to see Wuthering Heights. Gloria didn't want to see it, so I'm going to be in a theater full of horny English teachers on my own.
Why do you want to see it?
Because it looks really... I like the look of the cinematography and the production design and the art design. I want to see that on the big stage.
I have to say the low notes on the piano, especially that first piano key, and then it's like somebody sat on the lower notes of the piano. It's like, oh crap, that's pretty stressful. There's a lot of close-up shots that are just really intense. The zooming, I'm not 100% sold on it. With the water dripping, okay, I see the water's dripping. You don't have to zoom in on it. You're not making it any more intense. I've seen that today. I saw that today. It's not unfamiliar to me. But the glass
That's a really
exploding,
cool shot. I do like that moment.
That's cool.
The whole seance scene, I think, is really strong.
Oh, the seance. I think the seance scene, I think that's my favorite scene. That it's hard not.
And have you guys seen the others with God, I mix up Naomi Watts and Nicole Kidman so many times. It's one of them. The others is basically fully remakes the seance scene. And it also features a butler named Mr. Tuttle. Clearly very deliberate parallels between the two.
Yeah.
Which I mentioned in my Letterboxd review that there's a lot of people who love this movie. And I don't necessarily know how so many creators of kind of the last generation were exposed to it. I have a feeling it probably played on television a lot in certain cable markets. This seems like that kind of film. But yeah, it's got a very big footprint, regardless of its artistic merit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've about covered it. I'll just say I still think there's a way to do exposition and straightforward story that's more fun or entertaining or scary to watch than this. It's very box checky. Scott's performance isn't all that. And yeah, I won't be watching it again.
Yeah.
Until we get another prompt.
Yeah.
You're loading the next prompt, Christian. All movies we've covered twice.
Keep backfiring on me. And I keep pulling all of Zach's most nefarious prompts. It's just not gone the way I hoped.
I will say in this film's defense, because I feel like we've come across pretty negative about the film this episode. I do like the movie. I think it's okay. It's pretty solid. If you're somebody who really likes a horror movie marathon in October, who really likes like a November horror movie watch, and you're looking for variations of flavor, I think this is a pretty good choice for a haunted house film, especially if you're somebody who likes a classic Victorian ghost story. Because this does, as dull as it is in some places, this I think is the closest in filmic form, in feature filmic form, that you're going to get to that feeling of opening like an old leather-bound book and turning those incredibly fragile pages in which an old ghost story is written about your Uncle Harry who lost his foot bone or whatever. um, it gets that vibe down really well, and I'd recommend it for that at least.
Definitely like a made-for-TV kind of quality, kind of air to it. Something that doesn't really belong on a big screen, although some of the shots and production come across like almost like a full-fledged film, I guess. But it's pretty engaging. It's I'd say, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, but I think horror is the most oversaturated genre of all time. Maybe action, I don't know. There's a lot of oversaturation, but I think horror is probably the most offensive of the saturation. And I think with all of that, with all of the cheap engagement that there is, this definitely comes across as more like, okay, like that's accessible. That's something that's like definitely not high class, but something that's like acceptable in quality. That's not going to make you cringe or make you want to turn it off or shield your grandma's eyes away.
Oh, I'm
like
sure.
Wuthering
Yeah.
Heights, maybe.
No, I think you're right, Mitchell. Because horror famously is pretty cheap to produce, and historically has a pretty good chance of making its money back on distribution. So horror movies are often a filmmaker's first movie when they just need something to get bought, get distributed, get money to make something. Because comedy requires a lot of wit, and a lot of screenwriting prowess. A lot of the time, action, you need choreography and money for explosions and stunts. Horror doesn't cost much money to turn off the lights and throw some corn syrup around. So yeah, there's definitely some overexposure there.
That was a nice jump scare, Mitchell. Thanks.
I reacted much like George C. Scott.
Thank you.
In that I did nothing.
Assuming
that banging.
Assuming we're segueing into
that banging.
Week in Review.
Yeah.
Might I throw my hat into the ring first?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because I will be talking about none other than the 1939 Wuthering Heights adaptation. What?
It's all coming together.
Can't believe it.
Wow.
You know that this means I have to keep the previous discussion in, right? I was going to cut all that out.
That's right. Yeah, that was my plan all along.
It all circled back.
Our whole audience gets to hear your salacious nature.
Call me B. Crumb, because I be salacious.
Oh, Jesus.
That's a new Cookie Pocket merch quote right there. Okay. Wuthering Heights. I have somewhat recently read the novel. I did last year around summertime on a whim. I had a friend who was reading it, and she was like, oh, you should start reading it too, because I'm reading it. And it was sitting on my shelf, and I was like, okay, sure. Good reason to pick this up. And I enjoyed it quite a bit and was really impressed by Bronte's writing, because this was the only novel she wrote in her life. And it has a lot of genre and story elements that are massively influential. It's not a horror story by any stretch, but there is this opening scene of a character hearing the echo of a ghost, of Catherine's ghost, and then you sort of launch into this long love and hate, I guess, relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff. And the 1939 film is directed by William Wyler, who is becoming a personal favorite of mine. We talked about The Best Years of Our Lives on the podcast. That's one of his popular favorites. And I thought he brought the right sensibility to Wuthering Heights, and especially in 1939, his cinematography and there are these scenes just like drenched in rain, and he really captures the gothic atmosphere of Wuthering Heights without diverting from the text too much. I don't think it's one for one to the text. A big potential controversy of the forthcoming movie is the depiction of Heathcliff as a white man, because in the text, there's at least this suggestion that he's not. When he's first sort of brought into the family, there are remarks that he's dirty or his skin is darker. And Catherine has this romantic line to him where she speculates he's really this lost member of a royal family, that his father was a Chinese prince and his mother an Indian queen, or something like that. But there's at least a suggestion that Heathcliff is not white. And I think that's interesting and something that would have been a lot more exciting to explore on screen than just casting an admittedly very talented Jacob Elordi. Anyway, back to Weilers. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would, even putting on this sort of appreciation rather than enjoyment goggles. I did enjoy this quite a bit. I thought the actors were very strong. They even have child actors playing Catherine and Heathcliff, and they do a very earnest job of performing those parts, which I don't think you see a lot in movies that are this old, like 90 years old now, I guess. Laurence Olivier plays Heathcliff in this one. I kind of find Olivier a little insufferable most of the time, especially in the Shakespearean context. His blackface Othello being probably the worst example. But and we talked about Olivier in Marathon Man, also
We did,
on the
yeah.
podcast. Hey,
The connections.
but I think he does a great job as Heathcliff, notwithstanding the racial ambiguity. He captures this sort of darkness, and Heathcliff is not quite a Byronic hero. I think he has more of an anger and an edge to him than just like a Han Solo charisma. But Olivier walks that line great. I just quite enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of Weiler's work, his camera work, and what he brings out of actors. You get this sense of the character's eyes are just like literally brimming with tears and emotion, and always lit beautifully. And yeah, William Wyler's the man. And you should read Wuthering Heights too. Maybe after you see the Fennel movie, so you don't ruin it for yourself.
I will certainly read it at some point. Gloria and I have been doing a book club thing where we'll pick a book that we'll read together, and that will probably come up at
Nice.
some point.
Destiny and I do not read the same books at all whatsoever. We've tried. We're
You're
reading the
reading the
Bible.
Bible.
That's it. There's nothing.
That's ambitious, man.
That's a tough read.
I bet.
Which edition?
King James version, 100%. I am a
How about
purist.
those chapters
100%.
that are just, and this
I will
person's
keep-
son was this person, whose son was this person, whose son was this person.
I'm not drawing it out. I'm not drawing it out. Job is a 4.5 out of 5. Job is a 4.5 out of 5. Job is great. But I'm going to talk about something. Zach has lost his privileges. I am talking about something that is of biblical proportions. This is biblical
Despicable
proportions.
Me 4.
I am talking about something where there. No. Now in that movie there is racial ambiguity, but I can tell you right now, unlike Wuthering Heights, unlike
I bet Gru
the
is
Heights,
Polish.
SpongeBob SquarePants the movie. That's what I'm talking about.
I wasn't that far off.
Okay.
The only one. It has been foretold. Maybe in the Bible. You should read. It's been foretold that if you give,
That was a really,
thou
like,
giveth
Trump vocal
The SpongeBob
inflection you
movie.
just did.
2
Maybe
stars.
in the Bible, I don't know, maybe.
Sorry. It's a force of habit. But it's been foretold that if doth thou giveth SpongeBob 2 stars,
okay.
you didn't have a child yet. And that's Zach. Zach didn't have a child. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm done my bit. Okay. The SpongeBob movie is it, like I said in my review, it is like the adaptation of all animated adaptations to me. I think obviously I have a lot of bias, but I've done the best I can to remove my bias from the equation. Being able to adapt loosely, anyway, very loosely, the general story beats or the iconic parts of the Odyssey and put it into an actual kids film is very difficult. And being able to keep it within Steven Hillenburg's universe of like marine animals and making it so dynamic and engaging and really feel like an actual movie. I feel like that's kind of the hard thing, trying to make like an animated kids show that's normally just like really goofy and doesn't have like much to it, and like kind of expanding it on like a gargantuan scale. Not just in the, obviously the quality of the animation is way better, but just being able to like draw out the plot and have like multiple subplots happening at the same time is like indicative of really good writing. And not to mention, I mean, everybody's on their game pretty much. All the characters are exactly what you would expect. There's a reason why a lot of people that really enjoy SpongeBob like I do have said like the show basically could have ended there. Even though that is a myth that it was supposed to end there, it wasn't. There was already multiple seasons planned after this movie. The way that it ends is so unbelievably iconic, and having like a Twisted Sister song be parodied as so like good. The ending is very bold, and this is like a kid's movie, you know, and just balancing that adult and kid expectation and like always thinking that you're going to get the next promotion and you never do, and feeling like you're not worthy of that promotion. Like it's obviously it's a simple kids thing, but it applies to everyday life. It's something literally anybody can relate to. And I just really enjoy that. The paddy wagon being like the you know, Odysseus's ship and everything. It just like the Cyclops, you know, it's just there's a lot of really iconic moments in it, and it's all like in like a meta thing where there's like pirates that came to see the movie. The movie is so confident it's good that in the beginning pirates are literally going to see the movie that we're watching because it's that good.
Took that from the Muppet movie.
Okay. They probably did, but it worked here too. And I just really enjoy it. There's a lot of really funny deadpan moments, somewhat risque moments. I mean, you see Patrick's butt, like obviously. I think you feel like you see Patrick's butt in every SpongeBob movie following, but you know, like they calling Mindy hot and stuff. It's just there's a lot of deadpan moments like that are really great. The voice acting is completely top tier here. I could really go on about it. There's really not a lot wrong with it. I mean, it's a really simple, straightforward film, and it doesn't transcend animation.
Zach gave us a 2-star review a couple of years ago and said Patrick Star is an affront to all senses, including good sense.
And I stand by it. God damn it!
There's one. Motorhead making a song just for the movie.
Yeah,
that's great. Just for one scene.
I do think
the Goofy Goober song.
Goober song's iconic. I think I haven't seen the other SpongeBob movies. I don't think they're probably worth my time, but it seems like they all get caught in the trap of taking their added production value or budget and just like forcing SpongeBob into computer animation, which to me just robs the whole thing of its aesthetic and comedy of the show. But this one, I think, judiciously, presumably applies that budget to things like the music you're mentioning and those brief live action David Hasselhoff moments, which are sublime.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say out of anything that like doesn't make sense to the story that's like inserted randomly for no reason, that's like the one point where it's like, okay, like they're in real life. They just added David Hasselhoff because it's funny, you know, and they invested a lot in it. I mean, it's like the big fight at the end is like on his body, you know, so it's like kind of a big deal. It's a little bit uncomfortable, I would say, but by and large, I mean, Plankton actually getting the recipe, like just walking in and getting it, You know, that's like a running gag in the show, and they finally got him like to get it in the movie, you know? So there's just a lot of really high impact character moments in this. And it's like, it's really hard to find anything remotely like that anymore.
Sorry, I'm kind of zoning out while
I
you
could go
guys
on,
talked
Zach.
about. It's the
I'm
Vietnam
sorry.
mural with the 1,000-yard
sorry.
stare.
When Patrick touches the step and he's like, it's making noise. It's so great,
I don't
Zach.
understand.
You
And
You don't understand.
I have coworkers who listen
But
to
that's
the
okay.
podcast
But that's
as well.
okay.
And I have a particular coworker who, if he's listening to this, will know who he is, who loves SpongeBob and is constantly trying to convince me of the merits of the program. And it's just, it's not going to happen. I missed the boat. I am no longer 8 years old. The SpongeBob missed its opportunity to get its hooks in me long ago. Weirdly enough, I have seen at least 2 of the movies. I've seen this one, and I have seen this one. I've seen the one that Mitchell is talking about right now. The episode's not about the SpongeBob movie. And then I remember in middle school, in 8th grade, it was like the end of the year, and we watched Sponge Out of Water. I think it's social studies. Or it might have been English. It was either like the end of the year and there was nothing left to do, or we were killing time on like field day or something. And we watched Sponge Out of Water, and I think I read a book because I wasn't interested in watching the movie beyond noticing, wait a minute, is that Antonio Banderas? And it was. But
These are top tier voice actors, Zach. Every single voice actor in SpongeBob is like in like 1,000 other things.
Well,
and they're really good at it.
To keep the discussion moving in the same key, the Oscar nominations came out this last week. And wonderful. If you're like me,
no way.
You're probably very angry that Park Chan-wook's latest film, No Other Choice, didn't get nominated for anything. Not because I've seen it and I know it's really good, but because I was really hoping this would be another Parasite, where it got a very limited release, and then because of the Oscar nominations, it got a wider release, because I want to see this movie. But for the time being, I have to settle for The Axe, the Donald E. Westlake book that the film is based off of. This is a book that came out in 1997. Westlake's book is set in the United States versus Park Chan-wook's film is set in South Korea, but they are about basically the same thing. Our main character is a man who was a manager at a paper and pulp factory who is laid off, and he's been out of work for 2 years. And he's desperately trying to find a new job to, support his family, support his wife, and also to regain some sense of self, because so much of his life was tied to this job that he had done for decades. And he discovers a job that he believes he would be a perfect fit for. He would be a shoo-in for this position, if not for these 6 other guys. And so he decides that what he's going to do is individually hunt down and kill these 6 other guys that could get this position instead of him, so he can get that job. And we see him do it in the book. The book, Westlake is a real master of the hard-boiled pulp crime story. Sometimes Westlake leans into comedy in a way that doesn't really appeal to me. Some of his books are kind of goofy, but this really leans into his strengths. It's stripped back, it's lean, it's simple, it is all about process. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, for a long time, Westlake wrote this series of books under the pseudonym Richard Stark, which were about a character named Parker. And Parker is a career criminal who has no morals. He has no real feelings or attachment to anybody. His only driving force is professionalism and getting the job done. And if you double cross Parker, he's going to get you, because that's unprofessional. And you've got to tie up those loose ends. And our lead character here isn't quite that ruthless, but we do see just meticulously how he goes about these killings, how he plans, how he figures things out. And there's, when horrible things happen, they happen bluntly, they happen simply, they're laid right there on the page. And for some people that might be a little too trimmed. I think it works really well. This is about a 300-page book. It's not that long. I think I blew through it in like 2 days because I did not want to put it down.
Nice.
Really, really good read. For me, this is a 5-star book, and for context, the only other book I have ever given 5 stars to since I started rating what I read was Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. So this is on a high shelf on my bookshelf, and I really do recommend it if you like crime, if you're interested in seeing the film.
If you
like crime, if you're a criminal, I recommend you read Donald E. Westlake. Yeah, I really can't recommend it enough. For some people, it might be an example of like a dad book, the kind of, it's simple. It's about men doing manly things. But I do think there's not quite Tom Clancy. I think there is a little more introspection than that.
James Patterson.
And it is, you see
John
more
Grisham.
of this. You see more of this lead character than you do of somebody like Parker, who is very much a blank slate. But yeah, I recommend it. I really hope I get an opportunity to see No Other Choice at some point. I think the opportunity to see it in cinemas is probably over at this point. But I like Park Chan-wook. I love this story. I really can't wait to see what he's done with it. And with that, I think I am the next
With
prompt
that.
puller, right?
Sure.
Well, Mitchell pulled the
So
last
go
one,
right ahead.
and we were going Zach, Christian, Mitchell. So I think that dictates that I'm the next fella up to bat. So I'm pulling up my random number
Possession
generator.
was before this, right?
All right, we have a prompt. A rated R anime film released in the 1980s. I feel like this is the
I guess
Mitchell
I wrote
prompt.
that. That sounds awesome. I had to have written that. I was probably when I think like, oh, choose a prompt that's crazy. 80s anime rated R.
Well,
you have a lot of good options.
I am
looked that one up.
definitely going to go for that one.
Yeah.
So I have 24
Awesome.
hours. I don't even know if Akira is rated R, but I'm not going to do Akira because everybody would pick Akira.
Is that horror?
That's not horror, no. Also, does it say it had to be horror? I thought it just said rated R anime film.
Oh,
No.
rated R.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting in the pattern of
Yeah.
of game of the game equals horror.
Yeah, okay. That's I'll give that some thought. And I'll try not to pick one that features weird animated sex, because there's a pretty good chance you throw a
Good luck.
stone in the anime aisle in the
Good
1980s
luck.
and you're gonna hit weird animated sex.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game.